Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. One of the things that I've talked about a lot over the years as real estate investors is we spend so much time and effort and energy making money, and we spend hardly no time figuring out how to keep more of what we actually made. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. I got my good friend here, Amanda Webster. We're going to talk about how you can keep more of your money as a real estate investor, and we're going to talk about how to just run an overall better operation. So before we dive in today, I want to say hi to my good friend, Amanda. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always good to see you. I know we're scheduled a little while back and rescheduled, so glad you're here.
Yes.
Hey, before we jump into this, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you before we kind of jump into this topic today?
Love it. Love it. I always start with my personal because I feel like it's way more important than anything else. So personally, I identify as a mother of five because I have amazing children. And I'm also a military spouse. My husband's been in the military for 23, going on 24 years. And I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon. He's driving me crazy. And then we have three wonderful German shepherds to just round out our entire crazy family. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And
Yeah.
for the last almost 5 years, I was the COO of a funding company, and recently I switched roles, and I am now the chief revenue officer for a company called Accruity. Who what we're going to talk a little bit about today is what we specialize in, but really it's all about keeping as much money as you can and understanding some things. So I'm super excited to make the transition and to further helping entrepreneurs in the real estate sector be successful, which was always my goal, for the last 5 years over at the other company.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think I talk about this a lot now, and I didn't always because, earlier in my career, I had some of the same short-sightedness where I'm just trying to make more top line revenue. But when you realize, when I look back now, like ways we were sloppy or whatever without keeping as much of it, or didn't put as much emphasis on tax strategy, or didn't put as much emphasis on building kind of long-term wealth, or even cash, doing more with cash. Like I wish I'd kept more rentals with cash flowing assets, right? And so hindsight helps you with that, right? And hindsight helps you get to the topic we're going to talk about today, because at the end of the day, we want everybody to retire rich, right? We want everybody to be happy and financially free. And the reality is you just can't do it if you're kind of back office and your financial stuff is a mess. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So for a lot of you, we were telling some horror stories here before we started recording. For those of you listening, about friends, and for Amanda, clients of people that just haven't done their taxes for a couple of years and have a bunch of HUDs and receipts and stuff in boxes and shoe boxes or filing cabinets or whatever, to only get to it at some point. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is like how to get your arms around your financials and your KPIs and those things if you don't feel like you have it right now. So if your back office is a mess, hopefully today's going to give you some insights on how to kind of move forward. And a little kind of steal our thunder from the back end of the show here is, you probably shouldn't be doing it yourself. Ultimately, if you're in this situation, you might need to fire the guy or gal doing it now, which probably is you. So, but maybe share some thoughts. Let's kind of start off with talking about just some of the important metrics that people should be tracking, because a lot of people, if their financials are not buttoned up, they don't really. I mean, if you think of it like a car, they don't have a very good dashboard, right, as to what's going on.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of investors, and I understand it, you're focused on getting that money in the door, getting that revenue, having everything come in. But what you're not understanding is, where is that going? What is happening with that? Why are you not holding on to more? Why are you not growing? Right. So I say there's five financial metrics that every real estate investor, real estate agent, whatever you're doing in that space should know. You need to know your gross profit margin. You need to know your net profit margin. Your cash flow is huge, right? Because your cash flow is what's depicting whether you can do that next deal. What is your ROI from as a whole, from each property, from each deal that you're doing? What is that return that you're getting? And your EBITDA, right? I always say that you may not think you want to sell your portfolio or your business, but if you don't know your EBITDA, you never really know if you could and if it's profitable, right? You want to have something that's going to have a really good number there. So understanding that those are the main things you need to look at. All of them include your revenue. So it's not like you're disregarding the money coming in the door. You need to understand where all that fits in, and are you doing a good job with that? Are you really spending the money to help you grow?
Yeah, that's great. I think the advice is, I think like this now. I didn't always. Is like, I should be ready to sell my business at any time. And I've sold businesses, and now, I mean, it wasn't really until I sold a business that I realized, like, why don't I think about so I asked one of my teams this question a while back, a little while back, like 6 months ago. If somebody were to come by us right now, what are like the 5 or 10 things they would do to double or triple our business, right? And then it's like, why aren't we doing that? Like that's what we need to go do, right? It's almost like because you just get comfortable where you are,
Yep.
and
Yep.
usually if somebody's going to buy, if somebody, let's be honest, there sometimes people buy a business just for cash flow. It's like operating really well, but for any of us as small entrepreneurs that would sell our business, unless we're going to stay on as a key employee, it's probably like a value add sale. Like they want to buy you because they see you're mismanaging it. So they're going to come in and do this, and this and double the business. And so we need to think about like, well, what would they do? And why the heck aren't we doing that? Right.
Do
And
you
the
know
only
what the
way you
number one
know
thing
one
is?
thing, what's
Do you know
that?
what the number one thing is they're going to do when they come in?
What's that?
Now I call it the Doge effect, right? They're going to come in and they're going to audit your financials. They're going to
That's right.
audit
Yeah.
the money trail to see where it's going. That's the literal first thing they're going to do before they ever
Yeah.
commit to buying a business is, what do your financials look like? And that is why auditing internally yourself is super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, you're right. And so, but for us, that the financials are the scorecard, right? That, and it's not about like, it's not about, it's not necessarily about like winning. I mean, we all want to win. I mean, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it's about if you don't even know the score, like how do you even operate your business, right? Then you're back to, and I know some people that do this, especially on the contractor side, like in their mind their success is based on what's in their bank account today. I mean that's just not a way to operate. Certainly as a real estate investor, right?
No, because that's not a real number. That number
Right.
doesn't tell you, well, what do you have outstanding that's going to come out of that? And
Right.
what are you investing the part that's left, and there's a lot of pieces there. So, that's like me saying my net worth is what's in my bank account. Well, that's not true. I got bills due.
You got a bunch of debt. Yeah.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
bills due.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about I want to get into kind of how to fix some issues. And I think a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is really how to operate your business with confidence. Because if you don't have that dashboard, you basically you're driving blind, right? And so for a lot of folks that are listening to this and a lot of folks that run in my circles, like they tend to be top you know hustlers, hustle, just I need to sell more, I need to sell more, I need to
Oh
sell
yeah.
more, and I need to work harder. There's a lot of folks that are like that in this industry. We're going to talk about how to work smarter today, because you can operate your business so much better if you have the confidence that all the pieces of your puzzle are in place, right? So let's kind of start with the end in mind. We're going to come back to like how to fix some of those issues, but let's
Yeah.
talk about some of the most important KPIs that entrepreneurs should be looking at in their business, just so they have some clarity as to what's going on.
So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, if you as the entrepreneur are doing your books and keeping your financials healthy, fire yourself. That is not what you should be doing. Follow the 80/20 rule, go out there and get all the money in, get all the deals done. Don't be handling this. This requires a skill set, right? This requires somebody who understands numbers, understands books, and can be really good with detail, right? It's a lot of detail that has to go into numbers. So whether it's bringing somebody in house that you train on your model, you train on your industry, and they come in and do your bookkeeping and your accounting full time, that's great. Whether you hire a service, it doesn't matter. But get someone who actually understands not just financials, but real estate financials. It's
Yeah.
very different to run a real estate, business, whether it's an agency or a real estate investing, or running, a mom and pop restaurant. It's very different. Those are very different things. So don't settle just because they say they're accountants or they say this. If they don't understand how real estate works and all of the things that come with it, I would find the specialist that does that, right? Or hiring somebody in that can do it. And maybe it's a mixture. Maybe it's hiring a VA who can, do the inputting of the bookkeeping, and then having a service that can handle the higher end, forecasting models. You call the dashboard, that's literally what you need. There's these dashboards that can be built for you so you can understand where your money is at all times. You can understand your top line revenue, your bottom line revenue. Like everything that goes in between, and really digest where you're spending your money. Because unfortunately, when you're in the business and you're just doing the things and being the doer, you're spending the money sometimes not in the best place, right? Anyone who's in your group knows there are providers you can get where you can save a ton of money by being with the right group, by being in the right, place, by having the right vendor for that. So you could be overspending and not even realize it.
And I want to tell, I'll use some kind of real estate. I'm going to talk to the folks listening, real estate investor to real estate investor here, right? By the way, and I am a recovering finance guy. I used to be a finance guy. My wife so we have a CFO, but she was our CFO for 16 years, and she has a finance and accounting background as well. Is that, you know, we sometimes, I think, as real estate, but probably as entrepreneurs, think of like all of it's like a finance or accounting person and they're all the same. It is honestly, it's not that different than saying a plumber can be a roofer or can be an electrician. They're trades, right? And so I would say, like, for example, we have in-house teams and some outside folks as well. Like all of our tax strategy stuff and tax prep is handled outside. Internally, we have bookkeepers, and then we have like an accounting manager, and we have a CFO. But could our CFO go do bookkeeping? Yeah, but our bookkeeper can't do CFO level work because it's more strategic, right? And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes we'll be, the easiest thing to outsource is bookkeeping type stuff. And then if you want a little more help with strategy or kind of thinking, analytics, right? Is like until you have the bookkeeping and the accounting clear, nobody can really analyze it because your books are junk. I'm gonna just so you can't really tell what you're dealing with. And so I guess my point in telling you that for those of you that are listening is just because you know somebody that's done some bookkeeping before doesn't mean that they can be your accountant, right? They can do some stuff. And for a lot of folks that are probably listening to this right now, you might not be able to afford a full-time person internally to do all these things. And so sometimes you have like your office admin or whatever you call that person, executive assistant, is like, yeah, they can help with the books as well. But it's like, well, what if you could take that off your plate and let them focus on other things that a bookkeeper couldn't do? Like, their time might be spent hiring a $10 an hour bookkeeper that's overseas, maybe, or a service to do that for you, and have them focus on following up on hot leads and stuff like that. That's going to earn your company way more revenue. It's just kind of repurpose their time. So anyway, my point in saying that is accountants and bookkeepers and financial folks are as different as plumbers and electricians and roofers. Like they have a skill and something they're good at. And so
Yeah.
don't assume they're all the same. You agree with that, Amanda?
Absolutely. I think it's general business rule, not even just real estate specific, is right people, right seats, right? Whether it's an in-house W-2, a 1099, a service provider, right? So having the people that are going to be able to affect your revenue streams the most, right? But also thinking about, as the visionary person, how are you able to plan? How can you scale? How can you, and that's really one of the main bottlenecks, is twofold, is people in the right positions, because that will always be an issue, and then system and processes, which includes accounting, right? Accounting is a system process that you need to have set up for your business for success. So when you're thinking about those things, if you're wanting to grow It's the beginning of 2025. What are you going to do in 2025? How do you answer that question if you don't understand what's in that back office? What's happening back there? How do you plan? Anymore, it's the same in your personal life. How do you budget for vacations if you don't know how much money is coming in the door and what bills are going out, right? It's the same philosophy. It's just in
Yeah.
personal, it's a little bit more, simplistic to
Yeah.
do.
And really over this last little downturn here, I mean, what I've seen is there's people that are struggling, there's people that are thriving, and the ones that are thriving and doing well, they're just better operators. They're buttoned up more than the other folks. And I'll give you a perfect example that I think people will resonate with that are listening to this, our real estate investor friends, is they know exactly what their, we gotta call it ROAS, return on ad spend, or their ROI, their return on investment on advertising at the channel level. And so a lot of times people will like this is what happened during a downturn. A lot of things people cut first is advertising, and I am biased, but I believe to the core of my soul that the last thing you should ever cut is advertising because it has a long-term impact on the revenue and profitability of your business. But what tends to happen is people cut their most expensive channel first, which might have the highest return on ad spend, and then they stick with the cheaper channels because they're cheaper, but they might have a terrible return on ad spend. And you just didn't know it because you looked at advertising as a whole instead of breaking it out by channel. But unless you have your financials buttoned up and like for every deal I bought, here's the lead source it came from, and here's exactly what I spend by lead source. This is just one example that you can look at and make much better decisions as an operator because you have that clarity.
Yeah, the marketing arm is a huge piece of that a lot of people, however you're marketing your business or marketing, if you're one that's flipping and selling, whatever it may be, how do you know what marketing channels are worth investing more, right? Or
Right.
or or do you need to pull back from? And the only way to know that is following that trail, right? When I look, even for us, like when I look at the ROI for ads and things like that, I have to look at, what am I paying per lead? What am I paying for, cost per acquisition? What's happening within that funnel? There's all these things, right? I know every piece of that data. And so it's the same aspect when you're running your business is you need to know all of that data to be able to make the right decisions. Because if you're running TV ads, in a San Diego market and you're running them in Denver, Colorado, and whatever one's doing better is the one you put more money into, right? Like you shouldn't be doing things just based off of, oh, I just like that market or I like this
Yeah.
or that. So
And it's the same
understanding your
thing with
back office, yeah, it's
It's
the
the
same
same
thing.
thing with exit strategies too, is people assume that their rehabs are way more profitable, but there's a lot of I mean that the biggest difference, operationally, I mean obviously there's the managing a rehab versus a wholesale deal, but
Right.
there if your books aren't clean, if you're not I mean for us every we flipped hundreds of houses and every house in QuickBooks has its own class, so every house has its own P&L. So we can see down to the house level what the profitability was, right? And a lot of people that don't have their books super clean, they just assume they're making more money, but you don't know that for sure because there's a lot of noise in there.
Yeah, I mean, every property should have a budget, sheet that
Yeah.
you know exactly. And how do you know if your budgeting is on track? And then how do you start picking up on trends of, okay, clearly this, bathroom package is costing me 10% more now. I need to reprice that. If you don't
Mhm.
understand those numbers, if you're not following that in a nice, clean, pretty way, you're never going to actually do it, right? If let's all be real, if it's not handed on a nice, pretty platter, most people aren't going to look at it. But if it's nice and clean and it tells you exactly what you're looking for, it's easy to pick up on those pockets where you need to focus a little bit more time.
Yeah, yeah. It just helps with confidence overall. And I'll tell you, like, for many, many years, we operated like our financials were perfectly buttoned up, but we didn't do a great job of forecasting. Like, we didn't really spend a lot of time on forecasting. It was always retroactive, like here's reporting is like here's what's happened, right, which is
Yeah.
important, and that's what we've been talking about here. But maybe share your thoughts on the value, and I know it, but on forecasting your business, because a lot of real estate investors and a lot of entrepreneurs honestly are kind of living day to day. But I can tell you, you can operate your business with way more confidence if you have if you have somebody helping you with forecasting. It's like here's what's going to happen over the next 3 or even 6 months.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in forecast and projections, right? I always tell people like having a healthy P&L is great. It's a great thing. I'm not discounting it, but that's what already happened. That's the past. What does your balance sheet look like right now? And a lot of people don't even have a balance sheet. They don't even know how to do the balance sheet. So what is you where do you sit currently versus the past? And then going that step further, okay, if we take all the data from this past model, this current model, and then put in some projections, obviously we're in real estate, so we got to look at different things that's going on, then you can forecast. You can know, okay, if this property continues at this current rate, it's going to be worth X. If I pull money out of this, investment, it's going to be worth Y. That'll allow me to purchase over. Like, there's such a beauty in being able to make really tough decisions, but easy and quick when you actually have the data in front of you.
Yeah.
So you need the P&L. I'm not discounting it. You need it. It's a great thing to have. You should have it for every property. You should have it for a business as a whole. You need your balance sheet, like where you're at today. Where is your money sitting today? And then looking at those forecasting models. And let me just tell you, like, I'm not an accountant. I wouldn't do this myself. Oh my gosh, I would go crazy. I just wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
right? So that's the whole thing, is find somebody who can do it for you, whether it's that W-2 employee, that 1099, that service provider, whatever it is that fits your business right now. Find what makes the most sense, that's going to be, efficient, economical, to keep you profitable. But this
Right.
is this is actually how you keep more money. Understanding your
Yeah.
money and stopping some other spending that you may not even realize is happening is keeping everything in your pocket.
Yeah, you can get out in front of stuff. Like if you know, just hypothetically, like, hey, my overhead is 40 grand a month. And you're to pay your office and your staff and to keep, make sure your marketing stays consistent or whatever, just hypothetically. And you know that I've got two deals that we're finishing the rehab on now, and on average it's taken us 60 days to put them on the market and sell it and come back in. You can anticipate these cash flow. These are the cash flows that are coming in, and you just kind of guess as to when the timing's going to be, conservatively, right? So it's like, hey, worst case, I think they're 3 or 4 months out, but hopefully they're 2 months in. But that way, what you might do is say, looks like we're gonna, we're not finished with these projects yet. I was expecting to get a cash flow in from this. I was expecting to get 30 grand in next month. And it's like, okay, what am I gonna do to cover my overhead next month? If you can't,
Yep.
if you're not in a position to float it, right? Then what am I going to do to cover that next month? It's like, you know what, we're about to start this rehab, but I think I just need to wholesale that one because I need that money coming in right now. But if you don't have somebody looking at that kind of cash flow pipeline, which is really a financial projection of the balance sheet,
Yep.
then you're just winging it. You're just like, throwing some grass up in the air and seeing kind of which direction it blows. And that's not how you want to operate your business.
No, and let's be real, when they're going to have, real estate is volatile, right? As far as like, it's never consistent. It's always up and down. As far as like, you might have a month where you make 100 grand, you might have a month where you make 20 grand, right? It just depends on the deal flow that you have going on. But over time, you can start picking up those trends. But also imagine if you go into a bank, which I know is funny for anyone listening, but if you go into a bank and try to get a loan based on your financial statements, you walk in with a book of receipts and they're not even going to talk to you, right? So this can also help you become what we call bankable, being able to get real, true, cash flow, light months, having that safety net and be able to get really quality, low cost funding is going to come from having clean financials. You go in there with your P&L and L and your balance sheet and your projected cash flows and everything else, and you're telling this story. Bankers are people, but they also have these metrics they have to go by. But you could actually go in and get a loan, a business loan on your company. It's not tied to anything other than your company, and help you through those cash flow problems. But you're not going to do that if your back office is a mess, because they're just never going to give that to you.
Yeah, they won't even. Yeah, for sure. They would. That's the language they speak, is the financial
Yeah.
statements.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So rainy day
yeah.
fund, definitely another
So for those of you that are
need.
listening, you could go find here's what I recommend is these are such important things. You should really work with somebody that you know, or somebody's referred, right? When you find, so you could go
Yeah.
out and find, a lot of real estate investors are also cheap. We like try to find cheap houses, cheap labor, do everything on the cheap. This is one of those areas where it'd be worth spending a little bit more if you have to find like good people, right? And so it doesn't have to be a lot more, but you could go find, somebody all on your own, direct to a bookkeeper that's a virtual assistant. The problem is if you're not very going to be very good at training them, like you might, that's going to be a struggle, right? So it might sound cheaper, but it's like the blind leading the blind a little bit. Like you probably shouldn't be teaching somebody to do that. Of course, you can hire in-house people, and you could go through a headhunting agency to bring in bookkeepers and accountants, and or you could use a service. And Amanda runs a service called Accruity, where you can hire bookkeepers and accountants, fractional accounting folks to kind of help with that. So. What are some of the pros and cons that you see, Amanda, besides, kind of cost and skill? And I think the big thing is it's really, just to share some thoughts here on the real estate investor's time. Like your time is so valuable that I want to make sure that you guys that are listening to this understand the value of being able to hand this off easily because your time is so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's always about buying back time, right? So what we all want to do. We want to buy back our time. We want to spend time doing the things we love, or the things that are going to have the most impact, right? So unless you are an accountant and have an accounting background, if you are, then this probably doesn't apply to you necessarily. But at the same time, we all need to delegate the things that are not within that 80/20 rule of what we should be doing. And like I said earlier, it's okay if you want to go find a W-2 full-time employee who handles the main part of your back office, and that's great. But there'll be pieces that they may not be able to help with, because unless they're coming from that real estate background, they may not understand the forecasting models that you need for this specific industry, right? So I 100% agree. You should always do your research, work with people that have already proven their worth, right? They've already worked with people, and that's a great way to find any type of provider in the real estate anyways, because we all run in really tight circles and we all like to protect ourselves as huge things. um, but I would say you can piece it out too. You can do a hybrid of it, where you hire someone to handle the higher end stuff and you have an in-house bookkeeper, because bookkeeping for the most part is the same. Just got to learn a
Mhm.
couple different nuances for your business. So I
Right.
think it's figuring out long term what's going to be the best for you. And really, are you happy where you are? Do you want to grow? Do you want to scale? Well, if you want to grow and scale, then you want to find a provider that's going to be able to do that with you very easily, and that's going to actually develop a relationship, right? You don't want to just work with a robot. So making sure that you are enjoying the team that's there. So I always tell people you should probably start with finding somebody to do a consult or an audit and really show you what they feel they could do, and really talk to you to make sure that you understand the same language and that, they're there. So that's our approach that we do at Accruity. We like to do like let me look under the hood. Let me see what you have going on. Let me show you where things are at. Let me show you what it would take to clean you up and then to continue working on any level that you want. We have that ability to be flexible. But we work with anywhere from, that early stage investor to, the person that has, multi-million, dollar, portfolios and hundreds of doors. It doesn't matter, because that's our model. That's what we specialize in. So I think it's just finding that, right. And making sure you like the people that you work with, and you got to trust them
Yeah,
too.
that's great. Yeah. One of the things I like about services like yours are that if the person doesn't work out or they get sick or something, God forbid, something get hit by a truck or something else, is that they can be replaced in a day or two. Typically, like you have somebody to go to say, help me get this back on track. And when you've hired somebody directly and you don't really know what you're training, you didn't create a great training program, and they just kind of figured it out like on the job, then the next person's going to have to figure that out too. So if they don't work out or something happens to them, then you have to get drop you. That's the problem as an entrepreneur is that you get pulled back into jobs all the time because you didn't have a backup plan for that person. You didn't have redundancy. And so if something happens with that one person, either they're not a fit and you just decide to keep them because you're so worried about getting pulled back in, or they decide to leave or something happens to them. And then you have to get pulled back in and you have to go spend weeks finding that person and training them again and all that. And so when you have a service provider behind it, yeah, sometimes it costs a little bit more, but there's a layer of kind of management there that's protecting you from being not only the CEO, but the chief bottle washer as well.
I always like to throw in, like, the CEO of Accruity is a real estate investor, right? Funny enough, he's an accountant turned real estate investor. So it's such a funny little mix that he naturally created this service, and doing it. But, he understands the property management world of it. He understands, the construction side of it. Because he lives and breathes it in the other part of his life. So it's always nice to have somebody who not only understands the accounting, but truly understands the problems that real estate investors have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us today and learning a little bit more about you.
Love it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. And everybody, I think at the end of the day, like we just want everybody to be financially free. And it's kind of hard to be free if your back office is a mess, right? So you gotta at the end of the day, if you want financial freedom, your financials have to be clean. Like it can't just be guessing as to what's going on there. So you should definitely go check out Accruity and learn more about it and follow Amanda. She's an amazing person. There's a lot of great things going on too. So appreciate all you guys. Thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you.
Yep. And everybody have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.